Welcome to our latest video where we take a look at the latest right to reside or right to rent requirements in England. The requirements to carry out right to rent checks are set out in the Immigration Act 2014. These rules actually came into force in 2016, and a key point to note here is that they apply to England only. There are different requirements depending on who you are referencing. So in England, you as a landlord, or if you're using an agent, have a requirement to check everybody's identification and to check that they have a relevant right to reside in the country. For UK and Irish citizens, perhaps the easiest way to do this is to check their passport. It does need to be in person, so you need to see the passport in the person's hand to check for likeness and to check that they have a valid passport. If people don't have a passport, so for example if they haven't travelled abroad, and it's worth pointing out here that expired passports are valid under the right to rent checks, but some people simply have never travelled abroad and therefore don't have a passport. In these cases they would need to provide two other forms of ID. The most common forms of ID that we see in this particular case is a birth certificate and a driver's licence. However, you may also come across people who don't drive either, so they don't have a driver's licence or a passport. In this case, you need to go to the government website and obtain a full list of acceptable documents that they can be presented for the right to rent checks. You want to share this with the prospective tenant and give them options of different documents that they can provide in order to satisfy this requirement. There is a new service that is just available in 2022 that permits digital identity verification of people with a UK or Irish passport. They do need to be approved service providers though, so do check the government website for a list of approved service providers. For prospective tenants who have arrived from overseas, either recently or many years ago, they will either have a time-limited or unlimited right to rent. They may present various documents as part of their application. If they're very new to the country, this might be a vignette in their passport. This is simply a sticker in their passport that permits them to enter the country. They may present a biometric residence card or BRP. For those people who entered from the EU before Brexit, they should have an EU settlement scheme letter. This will give them either 5 years time-limited right to rent or unlimited right to rent. And for those who have literally just started their application, they will have a confirmation letter from the Home Office with an application code. Whichever document that you may be presented with, you do have the requirement to check this with the landlord checking service. So a BRP on its own, for example, is no longer acceptable. The applicant can apply to the Home Office for a right to rent share code. This is a really quick and simple procedure. They just simply go to the Home Office website and request a code. You then need to take that code together with their name and date of birth and check it with the landlord checking service. For those tenants who have a limited right to reside, you do have a requirement to follow up with them if they are staying on in your property. So you'll need to ask them for an updated either limited right to reside, or usually what happens if people are staying in the country, they have either applied for citizenship or then qualify for unlimited right to rent. Again, you need to follow the same process as we have just described by checking their right to rent share code with the Home Office. You have a duty to retain documents for at least 1 year after the end of their tenancy. It's worth noting there is a penalty of up to £3,000 per tenant if you can't evidence that you've carried out the appropriate checks, and this is whether you've carried out the checks or not. This is all about record keeping. And finally, it's worth noting that you may face up to 5 years in prison and an unlimited fine if you knowingly rent to somebody in England who does not have a right to rent. This has been a very quick summary of the latest right to rent requirements. These are different than when the right to rent requirements originally came in 2016, and the right to rent requirements were also amended as a result of the COVID pandemic, where video calling, for example, was permitted in order to check passports and various documents. The new rules are available on the government website. Just simply type in right to rent requirements in a search engine and go to the gov.uk website for more information. If you want to find out what else we do here at the Property Management Programme and what other resources we have available, then please do feel free to get in touch with us.